Okay, so uh, let's talk about engineered uh, disaster capitalism and the connection that the so-called wealthy shareholders and these titans of industry, uh, the ones that are called the job creators by the media and the government. And so I want to put a big question on this. It's, well, not a question, a statement. The so called titans of industry and job creators and the so called government often work hand in hand. Now, this is always put out by the propaganda media as conspiracy theory, and of course they'll bring on people who are supposed to be educated in this. They'll bring out a professor from Harvard or MIT or this investigative journalist or this philosophical thinker, or they'll bring out all these so-called experts to make a hash of debunking, and they tell bullshit and lies. And the simple truth is that that's the conspiracy. You know, they'll use these clever little things saying, "Oh, there's no cabal or people actually saying, oh, well, let's do this and let's do that." And the thing is they're right, but they're also very wrong, and that's the reason why it's believable, because you don't necessarily need to say it. You can do it by through something like, what they talk about, negotiations and so on and so forth. But there is, on every single level, a conspiracy, and it's not a fake conspiracy. It's a real conspiracy, because every metric is shows it to be true. I mean, just think about how much it's cost, how the costs have risen for just our food. Never mind our water, never mind our electricity, never mind the internet and TV and all that other stuff. Just basic cost. We've seen them grow exponentially larger. You go in, Coca Cola, good example. You used to be able to buy a can of Coke, and it'd be like 25 cents. And this is going back to uh, the late '90s. So, and you see what the cost is now, and that's just a frivolous thing. But you have a media that kept on pushing, whether it's print or on TV. You have a media that's pushing Coke, Coca Cola, and Pepsi, and all that other stuff, and the costs just keep going up. That's where the conspiracy is, and they call it, oh, it's because they're paid, they're paying for advertisement. But that's the thing. There's no concerted talking points, but these advertisement, that's a bribe. We shouldn't be actually having these products pushed, and the media should be talking about the way that Coke is produced, and how it, like, uh, like we now know that Coca-Cola used to actually put in cocaine into their drinks to make it more addictive. We know that the tobacco companies put in other things to make it more addictive. We haven't. The media does a thing about obesity, but they don't tell you about how much salt, sugar, and other things that have exploded into everything that we eat. Yet we see commercials for Captain Crunch. We see commercials for Fruit Loops. We see commercials where they have marshmallows in our cereal. So you have all this going on. They don't tell you about that. And they also don't tell you about the artificial flavoring and how dangerous that is. And that's because, and if they do, they cover it so little that it doesn't, that not enough people become aware of it. And rather than the media, the reporters, these so-called journalists saying, no, you shouldn't buy this. You shouldn't buy this because it's a health hazard for you, because it's causing obesity, and that they should point out the agencies that are supposed to be making sure that that sort of crap doesn't happen, like the FDA and the CDC and the politicians who are appointing people to these agencies to cover it up. So they're not pointing this sort of crap out. So Alex Lawson, I forget what organization he works for, but he was just on the Hills Rising, talking about how coronavirus has been known for 20 years. And then there's also the report, which most of us missed, about how Bill Gates of Microsoft is directly involved, knowing about a pandemic, and actually he and a group of others got together and they're talking about pandemics and viruses and all this stuff. And the thing is they're talking directly about coronavirus. They didn't give it coronavirus, but basically what they describe is exactly coronavirus. And this has been known for over 20 years. And Alex Lawson points out that the pharmaceutical companies knew about it, but we all know that the pharmaceutical companies basically have a patent on something and a monopoly on something that we, with our labor and our money in the form of taxes, these people were able to buy, and then they have a revolving door with like Alex Azar, who's heading the agency that's supposed to crack down upon this stuff. Except the guy is a lobbyist and an ex-executive for the pharmaceutical. And the thing is this is not new. Alex Lawson says, 10 years ago, and then he says 30 years. But this is the sort of crap that's been happening well before. The cotton gin and all the, oftentimes, the creation of baby, it's somebody who actually had innovation, who created it. They talk about Wilbur Wright and so on and so forth. But the thing is it always happens. Somebody with money buys the innovation and mental and physical labor from somebody who's actually innovative, and then they slap their name on it. And then you got the so-called people in higher education, these professors and these people with degrees, or people in society standing that it's supposed to be so much more educated and knowledgeable, spreading this crap, and then you have the wealthy funding the town criers or these flyers and so on and so forth, and news and print news to talk it all up. But this is the sort of crap that happened before even the invasion of the lands that are called Canada and the United States and Mexico and Central and South America and basically everywhere else that colonialism took place. It's always the rich. I mean, supposedly the Pilgrims came over because, because of religion and also because, they were being oppressed back home from the nobility. But but it was always the ones who were the ones with the criminal ideology, the ones who are the predators, the ones who are the propagandists, the liars, the ones that do the deceit, who get control of lands. They can get control of money and everything else, and the greater public, they should have been just stringing those people up and wiping them out. But they one thing that these criminals are great at is deflecting, and they deflect and say, "Oh no," like I got a great story. There's a guy, I forget his name. He's a professor of a professor emeritus of American history, and he talks about, and you can find it on YouTube. I don't know if you can still find it on YouTube, but I can't think of the guy's name. But he talks about how the slaves and those so-called unwashed common people had a lot in common, and they were talking to each other about how the landowners and so on and all those other were basically screwing them over. And what did the landowners do? They deflected. They said, you may have some good points, but really, you're because you're white, because you're European, and the blacks are subhuman, and they're slaves. You got a little bit more privilege, and so on top of that, they basically bribed the white people who should have had solidarity with the slaves. They bribed them and used their depression, their anxiety, and all that other stuff to turn them into the racist. They bribed them by saying, "Oh, okay, well, we'll give you a little bit. Allow you to own a little bit of land. We'll give you this," and it's all scraps. When the white people actually should have gotten together with the black slaves, and they should have taken their weapons and threatened these landowners, shoved them off, and they should have commoditized that land for universal use for both slaves and the so-called free white people, and as well as the Native Americans. That's what they should have done. Had they done that, they would have been better. But the whole thing is the whites basically bought the crap. They ingested the greed, infecting themselves, and they ended up basically seeding that greed and insanity to the next generation and the generation after that, keeping in place the inequality that would keep the majority, even of the white people, from ever being able to cross over and become and have the chance to be that predator. That's because the predation and the ease was more valuable than morals, ethics, principles, and common sense. This is something that this is how robber barons were able to get control to create kingdoms and name themselves nobility and kings and emperors. And it doesn't matter where you're from. This is the mentality. These are the predators. Microsoft didn't create Microsoft. That was done by us, done by the common people, the true innovators, the backbone of every society for advancement. Lawson talks about, these colleges and so on and so forth. But, the thing is these colleges are basically, even the private ones, are basically getting subsidized. So they're under the control of the wealthy. How much sense does that make? The wealthy are basically the landowners, the owners of, basically what it comes down to is the wealthy consider everybody else their everybody, the lands and everything else, including the people, is nothing more than property. Property to use as livestock. That's what it comes down to. So if you want to be property, if you want to be livestock, yes, continue to allow these predators, these super predators, to continue to fuck us over, because they can't suppress alone. They can't suppress, but if you keep buying into it, you suppress yourself and you suppress others. So you are the problem. We are the problem. If we cannot come together in solidarity, if we cannot see a common thread, and if we continue not to do anything and go about our existence, feeding the super predators with money, with labor, with effort, with everything, then yes, we're gonna stay in this stagnant phase forever until we self-implode and wipe ourselves out through our own negligence, through our own self-gratification, in our sense of safety, which is not there, and security, which is not there. We must move to understand that we are the masters. We collectively are the masters, the lords of our lives. That we do not need saviors. We have to take the initiative to learn about the natural, real world and how it works. We have to aspire to become more than the animals that we so look down upon. Let me give you a fact that a truth most people don't know, is that throughout all of human existence, those innovations that we talk about, whether it's medicine and anything, it's because we observed. There were some that observed the natural world. For instance, people that used to watch animals, they would notice that if the sick animal would go to a certain place, so like if there was not enough salt in their system, it causes health issues. So they would notice that these animals would go into salt licks, or they were going to these mineral deposits, or they were finding plants that helped with that. So we learned about herbs and other remedies from observing the natural world, because we made the connection. And this is what we need to do. We need to be able to do that, and we need to be able to take the lessons that others who are observant, who had curiosity, who wanted to find answers, to grow and evolve. We need to have that collectively. We need to have curiosity. We can't just go on, because how are we different from being herd animals? We still get butchered by the robber barons. And just take, for instance, that massive pedophile who was killed. He's been, I forget the guy's name, but you all know what I'm talking about. But the connections that he had to the top guy in the so-called justice system, who also was who got promoted to Washington and be able to carry out his crimes on a higher level. So you have to understand, we get butchered by these people. And that's the other thing, is that if you follow the story about this guy, you can see the clear conspiracy. But, you got even the so-called progressive media had to say allegedly. There is no alleged. It's a fact. It's a truth. It's a truth that Bill Clinton was directly involved. It's a truth that Trump was directly connected. It's a truth that Prince Andrew was directly connected. It's a truth that the guy that owns Victoria's Secrets and other businesses is directly connected. It's a truth. There are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people, all who have money or political influence, are connected. And it's not just in the United States. Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia, the power in Saudi Arabia, they're directly implicated. And I'm sure if you there's a show that I recently found, True and On, and you should check it out. But they talk about this and the connections of the most powerful people in the world. It's like, why Bill Gates does all this so-called philanthropic crap? Because he's one of them. So understand, we are being slaughtered in multiple ways. We're still slaves. Oh, we may get pittance for our work and our labor, and the vast majority of our labor, and both our mental and physical labor, go to the robber barons, to the thieves. And they use that to get greater control. So understand, whether it's wage slavery or slavery, there's no difference. Ultimately, you're creating the monster and legitimizing the monster, the demon, the beast, who's going to make our existence worse and worse and worse. Do you want existence or do you want life? That's what it comes down to. Life has natural equality. Life is evolution, and evolution isn't this what the all this fantastical stupidity. Evolution is about learning, so you can think critically. Learning, so you understand where the true predators and where the problems that we face is coming from, so that we can understand where it comes from. Then we can actually take steps to correct it. That's evolution. That's knowledge. That's stepping forward. And yet, we have generations after generations after generations born into bondage the minute we come out of our mother's womb. Even understand that bondage is slavery, and it doesn't matter how moral you think you are. When you create the bondage, and it's not just the right. It's those who consider themselves moral, ethical people. They, in turn, have passed on their bondage, their self-induced bondage that creates the monstrosity that we call existence. I give you a prime example. My adopted parents, whom I consider my parents. They're good. All in all, they're good people, but they've bought into the system, and so when they rather than actually think critically, rather than actually try to grow, which is the real work, the one that will give us a better existence on a pathway to life, they've created and injected the cruelty of our existence into me and my brother. And my brother is going to do the same to his children. just as my sisters have done to their children, just as you have faced, that we all have faced. It doesn't matter where we are. This is the sort of insanity that we all exist in. This is why we have war. This is why we have crime. This is why we have everything that is negative, that is stagnant, that that crushes so many that they'll kill themselves to get away from it. In any sort of society, if you as an individual are so crushed by the system that we all participate without actually thinking about it, then there is something wrong, because not one single person should feel the need to kill themselves. Not one. This whole idea of separation of male and female, and the fact that we constantly use male or man to describe append to the opposite sex, that goes to show how truly uncritical we are. And this thing called religion, that's just another avenue of the insanity that we exist in. The one that keeps us down, that keeps us from evolving to build a just, equitable existence towards life. That is what we are. That is what we exist in. It's the same sort of existence that promotes, and we largely ignore the violence that is done to others through wars and sanctions and all that other stuff. It is the one that states individuality rather than solidarity and understanding and growing. It is the one that the media has been pushing for 40 years of being selfish, greedy, monstrous animals. The ones that promote predatory behavior. You got the real world, and you got with Snooki, and you got the wife swap, and you name it. And Trump's silly, stupid whatchamacallit. And then they try to counterbalance it with the show where these so-called CEOs, and they go and work at their own. But that's sheer propaganda. And or you have Shark Tank, this is a sort of insanity. This is why Hollywood is destructive. This is why Alyssa Milano is destructive. There are no angels. Purity is a fabrication, because they're promoting. It's a promotion that burrows into the mind, which completely screws up our emotions. This is why you have quote unquote right wing who's espousing ideas that are completely and utterly self-destructive and keeps us in a state where we can't grow. That we are born, exist, and die. I want more than existence. We all deserve more than an existence. But that's what we have. We have existence. We don't have life. We have gone to the point where we have consumed with a monstrous avarice the very natural world that is keeping us alive, that is giving us freely. Now, I'm not somebody that says you shouldn't eat meat. No, I think meat is very important. I think meat is important. I think that vegetables are important. I'm not against sugar, but sugar should be used in moderation because sugar is energy. But we need to be able to use these things, these gifts that are given us, in a way where we're critically thinking. But we don't. We don't value the natural world, which is the most important thing to value. We don't value each other because we've been told that to get ahead, to have this so-called liberty and freedom, that we must be predators. And it doesn't come out bluntly as I just said it, but that's exactly what it is. And that's because it is the super predators. It is the ones who are the enemy of all life, not just humans, are the ones who always gravitate upward in a fake economy and society of existence. That's how it works. And until we all come to realize that that's the way it works, until we actually understand this, and I think in the next few years, if the next 10 years, we're gonna come to understand in a way that we're all gonna be going, oh, because the level of what's taking place is eventually gonna have to give us a good smack, so that we can't continue to ignore. The period is coming. There's a growing number of people that are starting to understand how I understand things. And that's natural understanding. Jimmy Dore is a prime example. He's got natural understanding. He's growing. He used to say nonviolence. He used to talk about free speech. But he's coming to understand how that's complete crap. He's coming to understand many things. And he's growing because he's following natural law of the natural, real world. He's understanding that the existence that we live in is a self-delusional engineered system to allow the super predators to keep control. And honestly, the so-called right, they know without actually making a critical connection, but that is the case. but they still buy into the nonsense. Oh, it's the brown people and the and black people and Asians and so on and so forth. They still buy into the idea of country and borders. They still buy into the economic nonsense that which is keeping them down. But on a primal level, they understand what is taking place. But they can't make the connection. Why? Because generation after generation after generation, this idea of conservatism, this idea that the left is the enemy, this idea that liberals are the enemy, and then the left and the liberals do the same thing. And it's all something that the super predators, the true enemies of all life, and not just, as I said, not just human, all life of the natural world, are the super predators, are the ones that gravitate to positions in politics, are the ones that gravitate to positions of police, of these businesses. That. And, and they buy into money. That whole saying, money makes it go around. No. It's our mental and physical labor, our innovation, which makes the world go around. The human world go around. The world will go around whether we want it or not. So, anyways, this has been far longer than I originally intended, and I think I actually forgot the reason I wanted to make this video, the core of it. Anyways, thank you for watching.